The metal corridors of the slave ship Void Harvester echoed with the sound of heavy boots. Commander Vextar walked through the holding bay, his 4 yellow eyes scanning the rows of captured beings from the recent raid on Terra Colony 7. His tall, gray-skinned frame moved with the confidence of someone who had done this many times before. "Excellent work today," Vextar said to his crew. "The Nexus buyers will pay well for this batch." The prisoners sat in energy cages that hummed softly. Most were the usual types, peaceful farmers and traders from the outer colonies. A few Altarians with their blue skin looked scared. Some Vegan merchants whispered prayers in their native tongue. All of them had given up hope the moment they were captured. This was normal. This was expected. Krelock, a young officer with green scales covering his arms, approached his commander with excitement in his large black eyes. "Commander, you must see this prize I found." He led Vextar to a cage in the corner where a small figure sat very still. The creature was tiny compared to the other prisoners. It had pale pink skin and strange brown fur growing only on the top of its head. Its limbs looked thin and weak. 2 small blue eyes stared straight ahead without blinking. "What species is this?" Vextar asked, though something in his stomach began to feel wrong. "It's a human, Commander, and look how young it is." Krelock pointed at the creature with pride. "The dealers at Nexus pay triple for young specimens. They're easier to train and live longer." Vextar felt his blood turn cold. His 4 eyes went wide with horror. In all his years of slave trading, he had learned to fear only one thing in the galaxy, and now that thing was sitting in a cage on his ship. "You captured a human young?" Vextar shouted, his voice cracking with panic. "Are you insane?" Krelock stepped back, confused by his commander's reaction. "But sir, it's just a small one. Look how weak it appears. It can barely fill half the cage." "You fool." Vextar grabbed Krelock by the shoulders, his claws digging into the scales. "Do you know nothing about humans? They're class-dotted death-world beings, and their young ones are the most dangerous of all." "But Commander," another crew member called out, "it's been unconscious since we brought it aboard. It hasn't moved or made a sound." Vextar looked at the small human again. The creature still sat perfectly still, but now he noticed something that made his heart race. The blue eyes were not staring at nothing. They were watching, learning, planning. "Listen to me, all of you," Vextar said in a low, serious voice. "Humans are not like other species. They come from a world that tries to kill them every single day. Their planet has deadly weather, poisonous creatures, and disasters that would destroy entire civilizations. But humans don't just survive. They make their world work for them." The crew gathered around, some looking confused, others starting to look worried. Their young ones learn to think and solve problems before they can even walk properly. By the time they reach the age of this one, they know more about survival than most adult warriors from other worlds. Krelock shook his head. "But sir, the files say humans are primitive. They barely have space travel. They've never conquered other worlds." "That's because they don't need to," Vextar snapped. "Every other species in the galaxy spreads to new worlds because their home world becomes too easy, too safe. Humans stay on their death world by choice. They turn the most dangerous planet in known space into a garden." One of the crew members, a large blue alien named Bork, laughed. "Commander, with respect, you're being paranoid. It's just a small creature. What could it possibly do?" Vextar was about to answer when a soft sound filled the air. It was barely a whisper, but it made everyone freeze. The human had spoken. "My name is Emma Chen," the small voice said in perfect galactic standard. "I am 12 years old. I live at Terra Colony 7 with my mom and dad and my little brother Jake." The crew stared. Most captured beings took weeks to learn even basic words in galactic standard. This human child spoke it like she had known it her whole life. "I was in the school library when you attacked," Emma continued, still sitting very still. "I was reading about engineering and basic electronics for my science project." Vextar felt his worst fears coming true. Human education. Even their children learned things that most adults in other species never touched. "You should let everyone go," Emma said calmly. "My parents will be looking for me. So will the Terran Navy. And my teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, always said that when someone takes something that doesn't belong to them, the right thing to do is to give it back." Bork laughed again, but it sounded forced now. "See? It's just a child talking about parents and teachers. Nothing dangerous about that." Emma turned her head to look directly at Bork. Her blue eyes seemed to see right through him. "Mr. Bork, according to the name tag on your uniform, you're from Kepler 442b. Your people are known for being strong but not very smart. You probably think strength is all that matters. Bork's laughter died. How did you? Your uniform tells me what ship this is, what company owns it, and how many crew members you probably have, Emma said. The design of these cages tells me what technology you use and how much money you make. The way you talk tells me this isn't your first raid. She stood up slowly, her small hands examining the energy bars of her cage. The energy pattern of these bars is interesting. It's designed to keep strong creatures from breaking out by using force. But it has a weakness. What weakness? Krelock asked before he could stop himself. Emma smiled for the first time since being captured. It was not a nice smile. You designed it to stop creatures who think like you do. But humans don't think like anyone else. Suddenly, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Red warning lights flashed in the corridors. The crew members looked around in confusion. What's happening? Vextar demanded. His second-in-command's voice came over the communication system filled with panic. Commander, we have a problem in the engine room. Someone has been messing with the power distribution system. Vextar looked at Emma, who was still standing calmly in her cage. But how? You assumed I was unconscious when you brought me aboard, Emma said. I wasn't. I was learning the layout of your ship. Every corridor, every system, every weakness. She held up her hand, and in it was a small piece of metal that had somehow been removed from the cage's locking mechanism. You also assumed that because I'm small, I couldn't reach anything important. The alarms grew louder. More voices came over the communication system, reporting problems in different parts of the ship. The thing about human children, Emma said as she stepped out of the cage that was now somehow unlocked, is that we're really, really good at figuring out how things work. Vextar reached for his weapon, but Emma was already moving toward the other cages. Her small fingers worked quickly on the locking mechanisms of the other prisoners' cells. And we really don't like bullies, she added. The last thing Vexitar heard before everything went dark was the sound of dozens of cage doors opening, and Emma's voice saying, Okay, everyone, let me tell you about a thing humans call teamwork. 6 hours had passed since the alarms first started blaring on the Void Harvester. Commander Vextar sat in his command chair, staring at the security screens with growing dread. His crew moved around him like scared animals, jumping at every sound. Report, Vextar said, his voice tired and worried. The human child has freed 17 prisoners, his second-in-command replied. They're all hiding in the ventilation system. We can't track them because she somehow disabled the sensors in those areas. How? Vextar asked, though he feared he already knew the answer. We don't know, sir. She seems to have used parts from the food dispensers, some wiring from the wall panels, and... The officer paused, looking embarrassed. And something she made from her own hair. Vextar closed his 4 eyes and rubbed his temples. Her hair? She pulled out several strands and wove them together into some kind of tool. Our engineers can't figure out what it does, but it somehow lets her interface with our computer systems. On the main screen, Vextar could see Emma crawling through an air vent with 3 other freed prisoners following her. She moved with purpose, clearly knowing exactly where she was going. Behind her, a blue-skinned Altarian and 2 Vegan traders struggled to keep up with the small human. She's moving toward the communication array, the navigator reported. Should we seal off that section? No, Vextar said quickly. If we seal it off, we'll trap our own maintenance crew in there with her. And I don't want to find out what a human child does when she feels cornered. Krelock approached the command chair, looking confused and scared. Commander, I still don't understand. It's just one small human. We have 40 crew members, advanced weapons, and military training. Why are we so afraid? Vextar turned to face his young officer. Let me tell you about human education, Krelock. Most species teach their young simple things. How to find food, how to follow orders, how to stay safe. Humans teach their children mathematics that can calculate the movements of stars. They teach them science that can turn basic materials into advanced technology. They teach them history so they can learn from the mistakes of others. He pointed to the screen where Emma was now examining a wall panel with intense concentration. The 12-year-old human knows more about physics, chemistry, engineering, and strategy than most adults in our crew. But surely our advanced alien technology is designed by species who never had to survive on a death world, Vextar interrupted. Human technology might be less advanced, but human thinking is more creative. They don't just learn how to use tools, they learn how to make new tools from whatever they can find. As if to prove his point, Emma suddenly pulled a component out of the wall panel and connected it to the device she had made from her hair and food dispenser parts. The lights in that section of the ship flickered, and then something extraordinary happened. The ship's communication system crackled to life, and Emma's voice filled every room and corridor. But she wasn't speaking Galactic Standard anymore. She was speaking in different languages: Altarian, Vegan, Kepler Common, and at least 6 others. "Hello, everyone," Emma said in perfect Altarian to the blue-skinned prisoners. "My name is Emma Chen. I'm from Earth. I'm here to help you get home." She switched to Vegan. "Don't be afraid. I know you've been told humans are dangerous, but we only fight people who hurt others." Then to Kepler Common. "I've studied your cultures in school. I know about your families, your customs, your worlds. We're going to see them again." "How does she know all those languages?" Bork whispered. "Human children learn multiple languages in their schools," Vextar explained. "They consider it normal education. By the time they're adults, most humans can speak with dozens of different species." On the screen, Emma was now surrounded by freed prisoners of various species. She was drawing diagrams on the metal wall with a piece of charcoal she had somehow created. The diagrams showed the ship's layout, marked with escape routes, weapon locations, and crew positions. "She's been mapping our entire ship," the security chief reported with amazement. "Look at this. She's identified every weak point in our defenses, every backup system we have. Even the emergency protocols that aren't supposed to be accessible to prisoners." Emma's voice came over the communication system again, this time in Galactic Standard so the crew could understand. "Commander Vextar, I know you're listening. I want to make something clear. I'm not trying to hurt anyone. I just want everyone to go home safely." There was a pause, and then she continued. "But I should probably tell you something about human children that you might not know. We really don't like it when people take our friends." "Our friends?" Krelock asked. On the screen, Emma was now surrounded by prisoners from a dozen different species. She was talking to them like she had known them her whole life. A large, scary-looking mantoid warrior was listening carefully as she explained something. 2 small Pixian traders were nodding enthusiastically at her plans. "She's turned them into a team," Vextar realized with growing horror. "Species that have been enemies for centuries, and she's got them working together. How is that possible?" "Human children don't see differences the way adults do," Vextar explained. "They don't care about old wars or ancient grudges. They just see people who need help." Suddenly, every screen in the command center went dark. When they flickered back to life, they showed Emma's face looking directly at them through what appeared to be a security camera she had somehow hacked. "Hi, Commander," Emma said with a cheerful smile that made Vextar's blood freeze. "I hope you don't mind, but I've been learning about your ship's computer system. It's pretty interesting. Did you know it keeps records of everywhere you've been and everyone you've captured?" The crew exchanged worried glances. "I also found the communication logs," Emma continued. "All those messages to slave dealers, all those coordinates of defenseless colonies, all those plans to raid more worlds." Her smile disappeared and her blue eyes became hard as steel. "My mom and dad always taught me that information is power. And now I have a lot of power." The screen went black again, and then Emma's voice filled the ship one more time. "Oh, and Commander, you might want to check your engine readings. I made a few improvements." Alarms began blaring again, and the ship's engineer's panicked voice came over the intercom. "Commander, the engine efficiency has increased by 40%, but I don't know how. Someone has rewired the entire power distribution system, and it's working better than it ever has before." Vextar stared at the blank screen where Emma's face had been. "She's not trying to damage the ship," he whispered. "She's making it better. Why would she do that?" Bork asked. Before Vextar could answer, Emma's voice returned, and this time there was something in it that made every crew member on the ship feel very afraid. "Because," Emma said sweetly, "I'm not done yet." 18 hours had passed since Emma Chen had first spoken to the crew of the Void Harvester. Commander Vextar had not slept. He could not eat. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard the sound of his own ship working against him. "Status report," Vextar said for the 100th time. "The human has now freed over 200 prisoners," his security chief reported. "All remaining captives are now loose somewhere in the ship. We've lost contact with most of our monitoring systems. How many crew members do we still have control over?" 23, sir. The rest are... Well, they're not exactly prisoners, but they're not exactly free either. Vextar looked confused. Explain. The human child has somehow convinced 17 of our crew members to help her. They're not being forced. They're doing it voluntarily. She talked to them. She talked to them? Yes, sir. She learned their names, asked about their families, and explained why what we do is wrong. And then, the security chief paused, looking embarrassed. Then she offered to help them find better jobs. Vexitar stared at his officer. Better jobs? She has access to the Galactic Employment Network somehow. She's been showing our crew members legitimate work opportunities that pay better than slave trading, and don't involve hurting people. On the main screen, Vextar could see Emma sitting in what used to be the ship's main computer center. She had somehow turned it into a command post. Dozens of freed prisoners from different species worked around her like a perfectly organized team. What amazed Vextar most was that they were all smiling. Emma herself sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by pieces of technology she had taken apart and put back together in new ways. Her brown hair was messy from crawling through vents, but her blue eyes were bright with excitement. She looked like she was having fun. "Commander," the communication officer called out. "You need to hear this. The human is broadcasting something on multiple frequencies." Emma's voice filled the command center, but this time she wasn't talking to them. She was talking to someone else entirely. "Mom, Dad, can you hear me? It's Emma. I'm okay, so don't worry. I'm on a spaceship with some people who made a really bad choice, but I'm teaching them how to make better ones." Vextar felt his four hearts sink. She was talking to her parents. On Earth, across the galaxy. "I know you taught me not to talk to strangers, but these aren't really strangers anymore. There's Zixco. He's from Kepler 442b, and he has 3 children back home. And Yilnara is from the Vega system, and she knows 17 different ways to cook plasma fruit. And there's this really nice mantoid warrior named Kliktar, who teaches poetry when he's not being forced to work on slave ships." The crew members looked at each other with confusion. Emma was talking about their own people like they were her friends. "I've learned so much, Mom. Did you know that most species in the galaxy don't teach their children about math and science like we do? And they don't have libraries like ours. Some of these people have never even heard of engineering or creative problem solving." Vexitar realized what Emma was doing. She wasn't just talking to her parents. She was sending a signal that could be traced. She was telling them exactly where she was and what was happening. "But don't worry," Emma continued cheerfully. "I remember everything you and Dad taught me about treating people with kindness and solving problems peacefully. I'm going to help everyone get home safely, even the people who made mistakes." The communication suddenly changed frequency, and Emma's voice took on a different tone, more serious, more adult. "Terra Colony 7 Emergency Response, this is Emma Chen, Citizen Identification TC74429 Alpha. I am aboard the vessel Void Harvester, registration number VH7751 Zeta. Current location is..." She rattled off a series of coordinates that made the navigation officer go pale. "How does she know our exact location?" Krelock whispered. "She calculated it," Vextar replied grimly, "using the star positions visible through the port windows, the ship's engine vibration patterns, and probably the gravitational effects of nearby planets. Human children learn to do that kind of math in school." Emma's broadcast continued. "I am transmitting a complete database of this vessel's operations, including records of all slave trading activities for the past 5 years, crew member profiles, and the locations of 17 illegal slave markets throughout the Outer Rim." Every crew member in the command center turned to stare at Vextar. Those records contained enough evidence to put them all in prison for life. "Additionally," Emma said, "I am providing documentation of 3,847 individuals who have been illegally captured and sold into slavery, including their current locations and the contact information for their families." "She's destroying our entire network," the security chief whispered. But Emma wasn't finished. "I have also prepared a complete technical analysis of this vessel's design flaws, along with recommended improvements that would make it suitable for legitimate cargo transport rather than prisoner transport. The crew members who choose to reform their lives will receive job placement assistance and clean legal records." Vextar realized that Emma wasn't just escaping or even just getting revenge. She was solving the entire problem of their slave trading operation in the most efficient way possible. "For those crew members who do not wish to reform," Emma's voice continued, and now it carried a tone that made everyone in the room shiver, Please be aware that this vessel's weapon systems, life support, and navigation are now under my control. I have also taken the liberty of contacting several bounty hunting guilds and providing them with detailed information about your crimes and your current location. The lights in the command center flickered, and when they came back on, all the weapon controls showed red warning signals. Emma had indeed taken control of everything that mattered. However, Emma said, and her voice became cheerful again, I believe that everyone deserves a chance to make things right. So here's what's going to happen. In 6 hours, we will arrive at Nexus Station, but we won't be arriving as slave traders. On the main screen, Emma stood up and looked directly at the camera as if she could see them. We're going to arrive as heroes. Every prisoner will be freed. Every family will be reunited. Every crime will be reported to the proper authorities, and everyone who helps make this happen will be pardoned and given a fresh start. She smiled, that same cheerful smile that had terrified them before. My teacher always said that the best way to solve a problem is to turn it into an opportunity. So that's what we're doing. The screen went dark for a moment, and then one final message appeared in text form. By the way, Commander Vextar, you should probably answer that incoming call from the Galactic Justice Department. They have some questions about your business practices. Don't worry though, I already prepared your statement of cooperation. Vexatar looked at his communication panel and saw that there was indeed an incoming call marked with the official seal of the Galactic Justice Department. Commander, Krelok said quietly. What do we do? Vexter stared at the blinking communication light. A 12-year-old human child had just dismantled their entire criminal empire in less than 24 hours. She had turned their own crew against them, freed all their prisoners, alerted the authorities, and somehow made it all sound like she was doing them a favor. We surrender, Vexatar said finally. And we hope that human child is as forgiving as she claims to be. 36 hours after Emma Chen had first been captured, the Void Harvester approached Nexus Station. But everything had changed. Commander Vextar stood in his own command center as a prisoner, his hands bound with restraints that Emma had somehow constructed from spare parts. Around him, his former crew worked alongside the people they had once held captive. Contact from the Terran Navy vessel Righteous Fury, the communication officer reported. He was one of the crew members who had chosen to cooperate with Emma's plan. They're requesting permission to dock. Through the main viewing screen, Vextar could see the massive human warship. It bristled with weapons and defensive systems that looked far more advanced than anything he had expected from the supposedly primitive human civilization. More importantly, it had arrived exactly when and where Emma had told them it would. Tell them to maintain position. Emma's voice came over the intercom. She was still in the computer center, but now her workspace looked like mission control for a major military operation. I'm not finished here yet. Vextar watched in amazement as Emma coordinated activities throughout the ship with the skill of a trained admiral. She had organized the freed prisoners into efficient work teams. She had convinced most of his crew to cooperate by offering them legitimate employment opportunities, and she had somehow turned their approach to Nexus Station into something that looked like a diplomatic mission rather than a rescue operation. Commander Vextar, Emma's voice called out specifically to him. Could you please come to the computer center? I need to ask you some questions. 2 former prisoners, a large mantoid warrior and a small Pixian engineer, escorted Vextar through the corridors of his own ship. Along the way, he saw scenes that his mind could barely process. Humans and aliens working side by side to repair damage, former enemies sharing meals and talking like old friends, children from different species playing games together while their parents organized the logistics of going home. Emma had not just freed the prisoners. She had created a community. When Vextar reached the computer center, he found Emma sitting in front of multiple screens showing star maps, shipping routes, and what appeared to be the organizational charts of dozens of criminal enterprises. She looked up at him with those piercing blue eyes that had haunted his nightmares. Sit down, please, Commander, Emma said politely. I have some questions about your business partners. Vextar sat in a chair that had been placed across from her. What do you want to know? Everything. Emma turned one of the screens toward him. It showed a complex network diagram with hundreds of connections between different organizations, planets, and individuals. I've been analyzing the data from your ship's computers. Your operation is much bigger than I initially thought. She pointed to different sections of the diagram. You work with 17 different slave trading groups across 43 star systems. You have contacts in legitimate shipping companies who help you move prisoners without detection. You have corrupted officials on 26 different worlds who warn you about law enforcement activities. Vextar stared at the screen. How did you... Your computer system kept very detailed records, Emma explained. It also had backup files that you thought were deleted, and communication logs going back 7 years. Humans are very good at finding information that people try to hide. She leaned forward and her expression became more serious. But here's what I don't understand, Commander. You've made millions of credits from this operation, but most of your crew members live in poverty. You could afford to pay them well and still make a profit, so why don't you? The question caught Vextar off guard. What? Your crew members work dangerous jobs for very little money. Some of them have families they can't afford to support. Others are here because they can't find legitimate work. You keep them desperate and dependent on you even though you don't need to. Emma turned another screen toward him, this one showing financial records. You personally have enough money to retire comfortably on any of 100 different worlds. So why do you keep doing this? Vextar looked at the numbers on the screen and realized he had never really thought about that question before. It's just business. No, it's not, Emma said firmly. Business is when people trade things they have for things they need, and everyone benefits. What you do is hurt people because you can get away with it. She stood up and walked over to a wall covered with photographs. Vextar realized they were pictures of all the prisoners who had been captured over the years. Thousands of faces representing thousands of families torn apart. My dad teaches economics at Terra Colony University, Emma said quietly. He always says that the real measure of an economy isn't how much money the rich people make. It's how well the system takes care of everyone. She turned back to face Vextar. You and your partners have built a system that deliberately hurts people. You've corrupted governments, destroyed families, and made entire regions of space unsafe for peaceful travelers. And you've done it all for money you don't even need. What's your point, human child? Emma's eyes hardened. My point, Commander, is that you're not just criminals. You're a disease. And diseases need to be cured. She walked over to another console and began typing rapidly. Fortunately, I've had 36 hours to design a cure. On the main screens around the room, new information began appearing. Vextar saw shipping schedules, communication intercepts, financial records, and what appeared to be real-time tracking data for dozens of ships across the galaxy. I've been in contact with law enforcement agencies on 47 different worlds, Emma explained calmly. I've provided them with complete evidence packages for every criminal organization in your network. I've also given them the current locations of every slave ship, every illegal market, and every corrupted official. Vextar felt his 4 hearts stop beating. That's impossible. You're just one child. I'm one human child, Emma corrected. We learn differently than other species. We don't just memorize facts. We learn how to find information, how to analyze it, and how to use it to solve problems. She gestured to the screens around them. While you and your crew were sleeping, I was working. I contacted law enforcement agencies, bounty hunters, legitimate shipping companies, and even some reformed criminals who wanted to help. I built a network of good people who are tired of being afraid of people like you. The communication system crackled to life, and voices began reporting in from across the galaxy. Kepler System Control to Righteous Fury. Slave ship Dark Prophet has been captured. 43 prisoners freed. Vega Station Security to Righteous Fury. Illegal market on asteroid PM447 has been shut down. 217 individuals liberated. Altair Justice Department to Righteous Fury. Corrupted port official has been arrested. Evidence provided by Emma Chen confirms 17 violations of interstellar law. The reports continued for several minutes. Vextar listened in growing horror as his entire criminal empire collapsed in real time. You did all this while sitting on my ship? He whispered. Emma nodded. My mom always says that if you want to solve a big problem, you have to think big. So I thought really, really big. She walked over to him and looked up at his towering gray form with those steady blue eyes. Commander Vextar, you and your partners hurt a lot of people for a lot of years. But it's over now. The question is, what do you want to do next? What do you mean? Emma smiled, and for the first time since he had met her, it was a genuinely kind smile. I mean, Do you want to spend the rest of your life in prison, or do you want to help fix the problems you created? Before Vextar could answer, another voice came over the communication system. This one from Nexus Station. This is Station Commander Errol Dock to approaching vessel Void Harvester. We have been informed that you are carrying liberated prisoners and reformed criminals. You are cleared for priority docking. Medical and counseling teams are standing by. Emma turned back to her screens. We'll be docking in 1 hour, Commander. I suggest you use that time to decide what kind of person you want to be for the rest of your life. As Vextar was escorted back to his quarters, he could hear Emma's voice over the ship's communication system, talking to someone new. Hello, this is Emma Chen. I'd like to speak to the Galactic Council about establishing new laws to protect space travelers and prevent slavery. Yes, I know I'm only 12. Oh, that doesn't mean I don't know what I'm talking about. Vextar realized that Emma Chen was not finished changing the galaxy. She was just getting started. 48 hours after her capture, Emma Chen stood on the docking platform of Nexus Station surrounded by over 200 freed prisoners and 30 reformed criminals. Behind them, the Void Harvester sat quietly, no longer a slave ship but a vessel of hope. News crews from Izay across the galaxy had arrived to record what was being called the largest single blow against organized slavery in galactic history. Representatives from dozens of governments waited to thank the small human girl who had somehow accomplished in 2 days what their law enforcement agencies had failed to do in decades. But Emma was not paying attention to the cameras or the officials. She was focused on making sure everyone got home safely. The medical teams will check everyone to make sure you're healthy, Emma explained to a group of recently freed Altarian children. The counselors will help you contact your families, and the transport ships will take you home, completely free. Commander Vextar watched from nearby, his hands no longer bound. Emma had convinced the authorities to give him a chance to prove he had really changed. He was now working with Galactic Justice Department investigators, providing information about criminal networks and helping to track down other slave ships. I still don't understand how you did it, Vextar said when Emma approached him. Emma looked up at the tall gray alien who had once terrified his own crew. Now he just looked tired and sad. I did what humans always do when we have a problem, she said. I learned everything I could about it. I made a plan and then I asked other people to help me. But how did you know it would work? Emma smiled. I didn't. But my dad always says that the best way to predict the future is to create it yourself. So that's what I did. A new voice interrupted their conversation. Emma Chen. Emma turned to see a woman in a Terran Navy uniform running toward her. Behind the woman came a tall man with brown hair and the same blue eyes as Emma. Mom, Dad. Emma ran to them and was swept up in hugs that lifted her off the ground. We were so worried, her mother said, tears streaming down her face. When we got your message, I told you not to worry, Emma said, hugging them tightly. I had everything under control. Her father laughed through his own tears. Of course you did. That's our Emma. As the family reunion continued, representatives from the Galactic Council approached. The lead counselor, a dignified Vegan elder named Salthara, bowed formally to Emma. Miss Chen, Salthara said, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I want to thank you for your extraordinary service to justice and peace. Emma stepped back from her parents, suddenly looking serious. Thank you, counselor, but I'm not done yet. What do you mean? Emma walked over to a portable computer terminal that had been set up on the platform. With a few quick keystrokes, she brought up a holographic display that showed the structure of galactic shipping routes, law enforcement jurisdictions, and economic systems. The slave trade exists because the current laws have gaps that criminals can exploit, Emma explained to the crowd of officials, news crews, and curious onlookers. Ships can avoid inspection by jumping between different legal systems. Poor worlds can't afford proper security, and there's no central database to track suspicious activities. She highlighted different parts of the display as she spoke. But all of these problems can be solved with better organization and communication. Counselor Salthara looked impressed. What do you suggest? First, we need a unified tracking system for all commercial ships. Every vessel should have a transponder that can't be disabled or faked. Second, we need better communication between law enforcement agencies on different worlds. And third, we need economic support for poor systems so they can afford proper security. Emma turned to address the crowd directly. Most importantly, we need to remember that crime happens because some people think they can hurt others without consequences. The best way to stop crime is to prove them wrong. One of the news reporters called out a question. Miss Chen, do you plan to pursue a career in law enforcement or galactic politics? Emma laughed. I'm 12 years old. Right now, I just want to go home and finish my science project, but... She paused and looked around at all the freed prisoners, reformed criminals, and government officials who had gathered to thank her. But I think I'd like to be a teacher when I grow up. A teacher? The reporter asked, surprised. Yes, Emma said firmly. Because the real solution to problems like slavery isn't just catching the bad guys. It's teaching everyone, including the bad guys, how to make better choices. She walked over to where Vexitar was standing with a group of his former crew members. Commander Vexitar has agreed to work with law enforcement agencies to shut down other criminal operations. Krelok is going to study engineering and help design better security systems for space stations. Bork is going to train as a counselor to help other people who have been hurt by crime. Emma smiled at the crowd. My teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, always says that every person has the potential to make the world better. You just have to give them the knowledge and the opportunity. 6 months later, Emma Chen sat in her regular classroom at Terra Colony 7 Elementary School. Mrs. Rodriguez had just asked the class to write an essay about what they had done during their summer vacation. Emma looked down at the blank paper in front of her and began to write. This summer, I learned that the most dangerous thing in the universe isn't a monster or a weapon. It's a bored human child with a problem to solve. I also learned that most problems aren't as hard as they seem if you break them down into smaller parts and ask for help. And I learned that even people who make really bad choices can become good people if someone gives them a chance. But mostly, I learned that being human means never giving up on making things better, even when other people think it's impossible. Oh, and I learned that Altarian poetry is actually pretty good. Mantoid warriors make excellent friends, and Pixian engineers are really funny when they try to tell jokes. Next summer, I want to visit the new schools that have been built on Kepler 442b and Vega Prime. Commander Vexitar says they're using Earth-style teaching methods now, and the kids there are learning math and science and creative problem-solving just like we do. I think that's probably the most important thing I accomplished this vacation, not stopping the slave traders, but helping other species learn to teach their children the way humans do, because the universe is a big, complicated, sometimes dangerous place, and everyone deserves to know how to think their way through problems. My mom says that's what education is really for, not just learning facts, but learning how to use knowledge to help others. And my dad says that's what makes humans special. We never stop trying to make the universe a better place for everyone. I'm already looking forward to next summer's vacation. I wonder what problems I'll get to solve then. Emma finished writing and looked around at her classmates who were struggling with their own essays about family trips and sports camps. She smiled to herself and added one final line. Peace, Mrs. Rodriguez. Thank you for teaching me that impossible is just another word for no one has figured it out yet. Outside the classroom window, ships from dozens of different worlds could be seen landing at the colony's spaceport. Traders, diplomats, tourists, and students, all traveling safely through space that was now protected by the new security systems that had grown out of Emma's summer adventure. The universe was indeed a big, complicated place. But thanks to one human child who had refused to accept that anything was impossible, it was also becoming a much safer and kinder place for everyone who called it home. Emma handed in her essay and began working on her math homework. After all, there was still so much to learn, and she wanted to be ready for whatever problems might need solving next. Thank you for watching, and comment for next part.